Good morning everybody and welcome to this introduction to Hearthstone. I recently started making Hearthstone videos again and a lot of people don't really know the game. So I thought it would be a good idea to make a quick introduction video on the game. And that's exactly what we're gonna do today. I'll explain the game to you, I'll explain how it plays, maybe even show a match. But hopefully we'll get to discuss everything that you could have questions about on a surface level, right? On a starter level. That's the whole point. If you really want to go super in depth, well, we'll have to do that at a later time. Anyway, so let's start at the very beginning. Hearthstone is a card game. A card game always comes with, you know, some very specific things associated with it. First of all, there's your deck. As you can see over here, we have our decks. Now, these decks consist of 30 cards, right? So as you can see, these right here add up to exactly 30. These decks have restrictions on them, as in you can only have each card in them twice. You cannot have a card in there 3 or 4 times, only twice. You don't have to have it in there twice. You can also only choose to have one of them in there. As you can see right here, I'm running 2 copies of Smuggler's Run, but I'm running only 1 copy of the Acidic Swamp Ooze. Now, there are some cards that cannot be played twice. For example, the Curator, because the Curator is a legendary. Legendaries can only be played once. Ragnaros the Lightlord, another legendary. Turion Fordring, another legendary. Usually the legendaries are both the rarest and the most powerful cards, as it so tends to be in card games. You don't need every legendary in the game to be competitive. I would argue I'm pretty decent at Hearthstone. I get pretty high ranks every single season. That's with me not even spending that much time on the game, right? Because up to this point, Hearthstone wasn't really one of the main things I did. I was too busy with Dota to really spend a lot of time on Hearthstone. However, you still don't need every single legendary in the game to get to high rankings. I don't have every legendary in the game, right? If we type in legendary here, you'll see that I'm missing Eradric the Pure. And if we go in there, Shifter, Saros, Mana Storm, Pagel, right? As you can see, there's a ton of them that I don't have, but not all of them are necessary. While legendaries are often very powerful cards, like for example, Sylvanas Windrunner is a card that is just insanely strong, and I'm sure you'll understand why later on. There are other cards like, for example, Reno Jackson, which, while incredibly powerful in the right deck, requires your entire deck to be built around him. You cannot just put Reno Jackson into any deck and he'll be powerful. He's a very situational card, and that's kind of how that goes, right? Madame Goya is similar in that regard as well, right? A card that really isn't very powerful at all, other than I guess apart from one very specific deck where she can really be super scary. Now, Hearthstone has a mana system. As you can see up here, every card has a mana value, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. In Hearthstone, you gain mana every turn. You gain 1 mana every turn. You start out with 1 mana. It goes to a maximum of 10 and then it stops. And every turn, your mana refreshes. The way a turn plays out in Hearthstone is you draw a card, you gain your mana, and then you can do whatever you want in any order you want. Hearthstone doesn't have phases like Magic the Gathering. It doesn't really follow, you know, steps or turn order. Or like, for example, in Pokemon, after you attack, your turn is done. It doesn't have that. In Hearthstone, I can attack, play a card, attack again, play another card maybe, right? And then attack, or choose to not attack, or just end my turn. There's a lot you can do, right? And in any order you want. I actually personally like that a lot. I don't think phases are really something that are super necessary in a digital card game like this. In a physical one, like with Magic, it is a little bit more required. But again, that's one of the advantages of it being digital. Now, there are some cards that you may have noticed are missing, right? Like, let's go back into my collection here. Wow, there's a lot more up here than there are now, right? Like what's going on there? That's because Hearthstone has this system of classes, right? So there are 9 different classes in the game. Actually, wait, let's not go in here. All right, there's 9 different classes. Now, these classes have their own set of cards that only they can play, right? So warriors can only play warrior cards. Shamans, wait, actually, no, only warriors can play warrior cards. That's a better way to put it. Shamans are the only class that can use shaman cards. Rogues are the only class that have access to rogue cards. Now, this can sometimes be broken. So, for example, if we go into rogue, you know, rogue tends to have some cards that allow you to steal cards from other classes, right? So Swashbuckler, add a random class card to your hand from your opponent's class. Cool, so you can take a card from them. However, as you can see, I now clicked on Rogue and I'm in my deck building. I don't have access to Warrior or Shaman or Druid cards. Those are not available to me. I can only build with Rogue cards. However, there's a set of cards that's called Neutral. Neutral cards are available to every single class, right? So if I choose to, can play Small-Time Buccaneer and all of this and just put a deck together like so, consisting only of neutral cards. And in theory, I can build this exact same deck with every class, right? So now our 30... this is the worst deck I've ever seen. But now our 30... you know, our 30 card deck here is ready, in theory, and we could play this, but we could build this exact deck in any other class. Now, classes also have a different thing going on. Each class has a so-called hero power, right? Now let's go ahead and actually get rid of this really quick. This is hurting me. But each class has a hero power, so you can see, for example, Rogue has Dagger Mastery, equip a 1/2 dagger, which costs 2 mana. Druids have +1 attack this turn and +1 armor for again 2 mana. These all cost 2 mana. The base goal of the game is to kill your opponent. Your opponent has 30 health. They can of course make that a little bit difficult by healing themselves or gaining armor like warriors can, which armor is just additional health on top of your health, right? And the goal is to just get through your opponent's 30 health, and once you manage to do that, you win. Unlike other card games, if you burn entirely through your opponent's deck, they don't just instantly die once they cannot draw a card anymore. Instead, they start taking so-called fatigue damage once a turn that is steadily increasing, so eventually they will, I guess, fatigue, right? It's kind of like something I think is pretty important in Hearthstone that they changed that, since else fatiguing happens frequently. But anyway, as I was saying, these hero powers are another one of those very important things about Hearthstone, right? Every class has one, and every class kind of needs it, right? Some of them are more important than others. For example, in one of the most popular warrior decks right now, you almost never use the warrior's hero power. But with Hunter, you almost always just want to steady shot your opponent as much as you can. Now let's go back and talk a little bit more about minions really quick. So you can see that the minions, they have 2 numbers here, right? Actually 3 numbers. Now this one we already explained. But what is this and what is this? This is attack, this is health. It's pretty straightforward, right? So if a minion attacks, and a minion can attack once a turn, on the turn after it has been played, unless it has charge. So if they have charge, they can immediately attack. If they don't have charge, then they need to wait a turn before they can attack. But a minion has 2 attack, 2 health, like this guy. So let's say my Direwolf Alpha were to attack the Bluegill Warrior now. In that scenario, both cards would die, because the Bluegill deals 2 damage to my Direwolf, putting it at 0 HP, so he dies. And my Direwolf Alpha deals 2 damage to his 1 HP, putting him at -1, which also means he dies. Now, if my Direwolf Alpha were to fight a Dirty Rat, for example, then that ends up in a situation where my Direwolf Alpha dies and the Dirty Rat takes 2 damage. Now, unlike Magic the Gathering, in Hearthstone, that damage isn't healed at the end of the turn. So the Dirty Rat now has 2 less HP until you do something about this, or I guess it dies, right? Like, it can continue to take damage like that. For example, a Dirty Rat would be able to tank 3 Bluegill Warriors over 3 turns. So your opponent plays a Bluegill Warrior, hits you, and then you have 4 health left. And now a Bluegill Warrior, now you have 2 health left, and so on. I think that's fairly straightforward. This combat system is pretty simple. Now, Hearthstone also has 2 other sets of cards, soon to be free, although one of them is kind of debatably one of the other two. But anyway, I'll talk about it in its own context, because I think it is actually a significant change from the other cards. But there are more cards than just minions. There are also so-called spells. Now, spells tend to have a more immediate effect, right? As I already mentioned, if I play a minion, like I play the Cutburst, I can't immediately attack with it. I need to wait a turn. However, a spell like, for example, Eviscerate just does what it says on the card. So, Eviscerate, deal 2 damage or deal 4 damage instead, which we'll get to the keywords later on, right? But, gang up. Choose a minion and shuffle 3 copies of it into your deck. If I play this, I don't have to wait a turn. I don't have to do anything other than play it, right? You pay the mana cost and the effect immediately happens. There's also another set of cards which are so-called weapons. So, for example, the Cursed Blade. A 1-mana weapon, you play this, and then your hero has attack now. This right here is how often they can attack, and this is how much damage they do. With this weapon, they can hit into minions, they can hit into your opponent's health pool, right, the opponent's hero, which most commonly is referred to as face. I know it's a bit of a silly way to put it, but if you are just attacking the opponent's hero, then we're calling that going face, right? Get used to the terminology. These weapons are very powerful because they kind of act as if they had charge, right? Weapons always get to immediately attack, they don't have to wait a turn. So, weapons are incredibly strong. Now, Cursed Blade, not specifically, but there's a card, Fiery War Axe, which is a 2-mana 3/2 weapon. This card is amazing, right? This is one of the best cards in the entire game. So, you know, like, weapons are very strong. And soon there's going to be a new kind of card in the game, which is a so-called quest. What a quest is a 1-mana spell that always starts in your opening hand. And with that 1-mana spell, you can kind of get I guess a quest, right? Like, it makes sense. You play it, you have a quest now for the rest of the game. If you fulfill the quest, if you fulfill all of the conditions on it, so for example the warrior quest requires you to play 7 taunt minions. So this guy, for example, is a taunt minion, which we'll get into what taunt is in a second. But you play a taunt minion, right? Now you only have to play 6 more, you fulfill the quest of playing 7 taunt minions, and then you get a reward, which in this case would be a weapon that changes your hero power to a very powerful one. So, you know, that's kind of another thing that is soon to be introduced with the journey to Ungora. Now, let's get into keywords really quick. Taunt is a very important one. What Taunt does is, Taunt is a minion that needs to be attacked before anything without Taunt, right? So, let's say I have a minion in play with, I have the Public Defender in play, I also have a Cruel Taskmaster in play, and you play a Fiery War Axe. Now, you cannot attack the Taskmaster, you cannot attack my face, you can only attack the Public Defender. Now, if I had 2 Public Defenders, you would get to choose which one you want to attack first, right? You can attack any minions with Taunt, if there are minions with Taunt, but you also have to attack minions with Taunt first. It's very important. Now, there's also a bunch of other keywords. There's actually a ton of keywords in this game. I'm only going to cover the ones that I find to be really, really important right now. And then, you know, as we get to other cards and talking about that, you know, we'll talk about that, I guess. So, another one that's really important is Battle Cry. Battle Cry is something that happens when you play the card. So, Cruel Taskmaster, you play him from your hand, deal 1 damage to a minion and give it +2 attack. So, you select the minion, deal 1 damage to it, and it gains +2 attack. This happens once, unless you have Brown Bronzebeard in play, which is a special little card, but we'll disregard that for now, right? But you play this, it happens once, and it's a power, and its effect just kind of takes place, and then that's it, right? That's the end of that. You don't have to worry about it anymore. From that point on, Cruel Taskmaster acts as if it didn't have any other text, or any text. Now, there are some minions, you know, that have more text than just Battle Cry. Like, some of them have Battle Cry and Taunt. In that sense, you know, you play the Battle Cry happens, but the minion retains Taunt, of course, right? But Battle Cries happen once when you play them. A lot of very powerful minions have Battle Cry effects. Right? Battle Cry effects are a very big part of this game. Another one is Death Rattle. So if we look at Death Rattle, there are a lot of minions like that. So Loot Hoarder, Death Rattle, draw a card. Death Rattle is kind of the opposite to Battle Cry. It happens when the minion dies, right? It doesn't happen when the minion is played, it happens when it dies. So I play my Loot Hoarder and then it dies, and you know, then I draw a card. While there's another card with Battle Cry, which has a similar effect, which is, where is she? Novice Engineer, which is 2 mana, but Battlecry, draw a card. Now you may notice that this one is a 1/1 as opposed to the Loot Hoarder, who was a 2/1. That's because, generally speaking, Battlecries are more powerful than Death Rattlers. They are more reliable, they're instant, you get more value out of them. As such, the Novice Engineer is a weaker statted minion to make up for the effect that it carries in its Battlecry. We have Discover. Discover is a very important one, actually. Discover is not... Thank you, Nikita. Discover is something that has only recently been added into the game. What it does is it shows you 3 cards, and then you can pick out of one of those to, you know, like, whatever happens, right? For example, if this one, Battlecry, so it happens when you play it. Discover, you get to pick out of 3 cards, a Mage, Priest, or a Warlock card. So you're offered a Mage, a Priest, or a Warlock card, and then you can choose one, and it goes into your hand. Discover is something that happens a lot. Adapt is a new keyword that's coming out with the expansion that is now about to be released. It is something that allows you to change the properties of a minion, right? So Adapt has, I think, 10 possibilities. You can get +3 attack, +3 health, +1/+1, Taunt, you know, all kinds of stuff. The thing is that adapting is going to be an important thing of the game in the future, or in the game in the future, and as such I just thought I might as well bring it up really quick. Anyway, let's move on from keywords. Classes. So we already discussed hero powers really quickly. Now each class has an identity as well, and this is something that's really important. This is something the developers of Hearthstone care a lot about, and I want to just briefly touch on that. So a warrior's identity is historically speaking a very slow class, right? They tend to take their time, they tend to just kind of like armor up a lot, right? Gain a lot of health that way and play a slow game. Although currently, funnily enough, the best warrior deck is a hyper aggressive one that just tries to end the game as quickly as possible. Shaman's identity is a little bit more difficult to specify. It's kind of the all-rounder class, I would say. Shamans are good at everything, and they just kind of can do everything. They're just really powerful in that regard. Shaman's hero power summons a random totem. There are 4 different totems. There's a Taunt totem, a Healing totem, a Searing totem, and a Spell Power totem. Now, Spell Power is Nikita. Okay. Come here. You don't want to come here. You just want to meow at me aggressively. Come on, you'll be fine. You'll survive. So, Totemic Call gives you a Healing totem, which is a 0/2 totem that heals minions every turn. A Taunt totem, which just has Taunt. A Spell Power totem, which has Spell Power +1. Spell Power makes it so that, you know, you deal 1 more. Or Spell Power, I guess it's called Spell Damage these days. It used to be called Spell Power, but your spells deal 1 more damage. And then just the Steering totem, which is just a 1/1 totem. Again, Shaman is kind of good at everything. It's definitely the strongest class right now, I think. Warrior, I think, has the strongest deck in the game currently. That is pre-expansion, and expansion comes out in like 3 days, so it's not going to be relevant for very long. But Warrior is has the strongest deck, while Shaman, I think, is the strongest overall class. Although I know I didn't really go to tell you a lot about its identity, but it's kind of difficult to specify that. It seems in the upcoming expansion, a lot of the identity is going to stem from elementals, and their synergies, which elementals are cards that require you to play an elemental in the turn before, so you always want to play elementals following up on elementals and kind of gain bonuses that way. Rogues are interesting. Rogues like to play a lot of cards in one turn. They like to create huge minions that are incredibly powerful and then hide them in stealth. Which stealth makes it so you can't really interact with the minions. You can't cast anything on them. You can't attack them. They're just going to sit there, and you kind of need to hope they don't kill you next turn. Stealth is something that is going to be nerfed hard with the upcoming expansion. But, yeah, I guess that's just how it's gonna be, right? Rogue is actually losing a lot of its identity with the next expansion, and it's gonna be interesting to see what they do next. I'm not quite sure. Rogue equips a 1/2 dagger. Paladin. Paladins are one of two things. They either buff a lot of things, which means they, you know, really make their minions big. They have cards that give them +4/+4 health, right? So, if we look at Paladin here really quick, you'll see that Paladins, they have cards like Keeper of Uldaman, set the minions attack and health to 3. They have, wait, why? Oh, because I'm only in Battlecry. Alright, there we go. Right, you have Sword of Justice. After you summon a minion, give it +1/+1. Blessing of Kings, give a minion +4/+4. This is something they're also pushing with the new expansion. So, Paladins are going to be either about buffing things, or they are about just grinding the game out and then having some very powerful minions in the late game. Reinforced Summon a 1/1 Silverhand Recruit, which is just a 1/1, right? It's just like a small little body name. Hunters, traditionally very aggressive, right? They have a hero power which deals 2 damage to the enemy hero, which just makes it so, hey, we're gonna be killing you very slowly, right? We'll get there. Hunter's identity is usually very beast-centered, right? So there's a lot of beast cards in Hunter. There we go. Right, so this guy is a beast, and this guy is a beast. And these beasts have synergies with our beasts, right? So this guy, your other beasts have +1 attack. Or the big one that everybody always uses, probably the most powerful one, is Houndmaster. Give a friendly beast +2/+2 and Taunt. Right, so you have your beasts that enhance your other cards. Kill command, deal 3 damage. If you control a beast, deal 5 damage instead. The idea is, as a hunter, you're trying to have beasts that, you know, make everything more powerful, and then you're just kind of killing your opponent pretty damn quickly with your hero power. Hunters are gonna be swarming a lot in the new expansion, right? They like to play a lot of minions that are just really sticky. They stay on the board. They have death rattlers that summon more minions that stay on the board, right? Again, here, like summon 2 1/1 spiders, one of Hunter's best cards. Summon 2 2/2 hyenas. Hunters are sticky and they just kind of kill you. Alright, that's what they wanna do. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Then we've got Druids. Druids identity is a lot about ramping. They are essentially the green of Hearthstone. So with Druid, what you want to do is play cards like, for example, Innovate, gain 2 mana crystals. You play cards like, oh, no, that's not what I want to do. You play cards like Wild Growth, which makes it so that you gain an empty mana crystal. Usually, everybody only gains 1 mana crystal a turn, but a Druid can accelerate that and get big to get to the high mana values really, really quickly. And then later on, after you've gotten there, you play big cards like Scenarios, which is a huge minion, right? You play Ironbark Protector, although this card has never seen play, but you know, just for the sake of argument. You play big minions that are really difficult to get through and pose a big threat for your opponent. Druids struggle removing minions from your opponent, right? Druids don't have a lot of cards that allow them to just clear something out. You know, if you yourself get a lot of minions on the board, a lot of strong stuff there before the Druid does, then Druids really have problems dealing with that. But Druids are also the class that has, I guess, the most dreamy setups. You know, Druids are like, okay, we have to dream here, you know, we want to really go in. So, yeah. Warlock, hero power, draw a card and take 2 damage. There's kind of 2 kinds of Warlocks, which are either very aggressive, Sue-orientated Warlocks. They tend to like really rush you down with a lot of minions using life tap to get new cards into their hand that they can play to, again, keep throwing stuff on the board and keep attacking you with all of these minions, gaining control of the board with just a bunch of dudes there. Or they use the life tap to get a lot of removal. Right, so if we look at Warlock, they have 2 kinds of cards, right? They have cards like Flame Imp, which is a strong 1 mana minion, Possessed Villager, Malkazar's Imp. These are all strong, low-cost cards. Or they also have the exact opposite, which is stuff like Lord Jaraxxus or Abyssal Enforcer, Siphon Soul, and Twisting Never. These cards aren't cheap. These cards don't fit in those aggressive decks. They're meant for the exact opposite, for controlling decks, for slow decks that try to stall the game out and play really powerful minions. And then, you know, like, and to get there, they constantly need to draw new removal cards, new cards that allow them to survive, and that's what they use the hero power for. In the new expansion, I'm a little worried about those kind of Warlock decks, since they are losing one of the most important cards, which is Reno Jackson, but we'll get to that in a second. Mage, Mage's identity is quite interesting, but it usually comes down to just casting a lot of spells, right? They have a lot of spells, that's what they do. I mean, they're a mage, it's not really a surprise. They have cards like Mana Worm. Whenever you cast a spell, gain +1 attack. Frostbolt, deal 3 damage, draw 2 cards. Forgotten Torch, Fireball. Where is it? Fireball, deal 6 damage. Right, very simple cards. They're just like deal damage. But what you do is you kind of sit there and you wait. There's kind of 2 archetypes there that, you know, like how you can do that. Again, we're gonna talk about more specifics in a second. But generally speaking, mages are perfectly willing to just kill you with spells, right? They don't necessarily want to like rush you down. They just are happy to play a few minions and then throw a bunch of spells in your face and then you die. Mages are actually pretty damn scary, like absolutely terrifying. Cards like Pyroblast deal 10 damage. You gotta keep in mind, you only have 30 life. 10 damage is a lot there. That's a third of your HP. And then we have the last class, which is going to be the priest. A priest's identity is kind of difficult to find. Their hero power allows them to heal, right? Restore 2 health. That's something that is useful for a lot of minion combat, but they don't have a lot of cards that are good with minion combat. They are very gimmicky, I would argue, right? They have cards like Shadow Word Pain, which destroys a minion with 3 or less attack, and Shadow Word Death, which destroys a minion with 5 or more attack. You may have noticed they don't have a Shadow Word 4 attack. Yeah, they kind of have that sweet spot, right? Where if a minion has 4 HP, they really struggle to 4 attack, they really struggle to kill it. Mages are very not mages. Priests are very gimmicky, and I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon. But they do like a lot of minion combat, since they can heal really, really well. Now, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit more deck specifics, right? So I want to discuss deck archetypes. What is an archetype? An archetype is a certain direction a deck takes, right? So there's a lot of different variations of said archetype, but the archetype just kind of encompasses the general idea of this deck. It doesn't matter if the cards in it are always the same, it's just, is it this specific thing? So, first of all, there is kind of a holy trinity of archetypes in card games called, well, not called anything, but that holy trinity is aggro, control, and combo. Now, aggro is something like this. This right here is an aggro warrior. You may notice the highest cost cards are 5 mana. There's a lot of 1 mana and 2 mana and 3 mana cards in here, right? Like this is what our curve looks like. Like we have nothing on the high end. We're just trying to have a lot of very cheap cards. That's because this deck has the purpose to just kill your opponent, right? You are not happy to wait the game out at all. You want to go in and slaughter your opponent before they get to do anything. This kind of deck tries to win on turn 4. This kind of deck runs out of steam very quickly, right? Oftentimes with an aggressive deck, what happens is you run in, you rush your opponent down, and then if they manage to survive somehow, right, they kill all of your minions and they heal themselves, then you just don't have enough damage to kill them, and then you lose by just simply being out of steam, out of cards that you can't play. You may notice there, well, actually, I'm assuming if you don't know anything about Hearthstone, then you may not notice this, but there is no card draw in a deck like this. There's not a single card in here that lets you draw a card, which is really important, right? That means eventually you get into top decking, which means you have no hand, right? And you just need to hope that the first card you draw each turn is what you need. and that is not good. So this is an aggressive deck. Now, aggressive decks are always in a war with control decks. This right here is a control deck. This, more specifically, is a Reno Jackson deck, which we'll get into the specifics of in a little bit. But this right here is a control deck. As you can see, its high end is a little bit more laid out. A more traditional control deck would be... do I actually even have one? Control isn't very powerful at the moment. Well, let's go ahead and just build one, right? But like a more traditional control deck would look something like this. Right, so you include some something like an Armor Smith. Whenever friendly minions takes damage, gain 1 armor. Something that heals you, right? Whirlwinds, which allow you to clear out the board. You have stuff like Execute, destroy a damaged enemy minion. The War Axe to clear out more stuff on the board. Slam, you clear out, you clear out. You see how I'm taking all of these cards that just clear the board. We take Ghouls, again, they clear the board. Shield Block, gain 5 armor, that is health, right? Draw a card, that is healing. We get Taunts in there, right? We get more Taunts in there. We get big AoE removal, like Brawl in there. And then, in the late game, we toss in cards like Grommash and Baron Geddon and, you know, Ragnaros, Alexstrasza. All of these super scary legendaries, Viscera. The point here is we're gonna grind out the game. We're just gonna keep our opponents away and stay alive. And then later on, we win simply by virtue of throwing down a huge ass threat. Right, so what you do is you kill all of your opponent's stuff, and then you know, you start being more proactive with your own stuff and play these huge legendaries. This kind of deck used to be called a Wallet Warrior. It's not really viable anymore, and this is not a good list, of course, right? But just to showcase what it would look like, you can see that the curve is a lot more towards the later game, right? Like a lot of early game, just to make sure that we can remove it. Then in the middle of it, it's just like a little bit and then late game it gets really big again, because you want to have these threats to close out the game. Now this portion here, this like really strong portion of like late game stuff, is gonna be taken over by quests in the upcoming expansion, right? Quests are gonna be really good at replacing this and making it a little bit more possible to play a deck like this again. Now, combo decks... no, I don't want you to finish this. Combo decks are stuff like, for example, the Kufun combo I've got here. Right, now, this deck, what it does is it tries to just stay alive, similar to a control deck, but it doesn't actively have anything to kill your opponent other than a few specific cards. And actually its main purpose is not so much to stay alive, like that's more of like something they have to do, but its main purpose is to draw as many cards as possible from their deck to enable a combo of specific cards. So in this circumstance, we have a combo of Aviana, Kufun, Kun, Dark Aroka, or anything else really, or this type of Kufun. It's not really super necessary, but Bran and Youthful Brewmaster, right? So if I have Youthful Brewmaster, Bran, Aviana, Kufun, Kun, and either a Dark Aroka or Disciple of Kufun in hand, and I'm at 10 mana, I win the game instantly, because that combo deals like 60 damage across the entire enemy's board, including their hero, which usually just kills them, right? They're just dead now. That is a combo deck. Now, these combo decks are actually traditionally very good against control decks, because control decks just want to remove everything your opponent plays and stay alive and then play big threats themselves, but they don't have anything to remove because a combo deck doesn't give a shit about that. A combo deck just wants to draw as many cards as possible, right? While if you look at a combo versus aggro, aggro would destroy something like this because this is super greedy, right? This doesn't have enough removal to stay alive. Now, aggro against control is something that's a little bit more difficult, but usually, well, actually, no, like that's something that's a little bit more difficult to like see who wins there, right? But that's kind of how that goes. So, aggro keeps combo in check, and combo keeps control in check. And control and aggro are kind of like going up against each other. That's the holy trinity. Of course, that's not all of it. There's a lot more. There's decks like mid-range decks. So for example, this right here is a mid-range shaman. You may notice this curve is going towards the late game, but not entirely. This deck tries to just kind of like kind of play and then win by having stuff at like turn 7, turn 8. Like they don't try to instantly win the game. They don't want to finish it by turn 4. They can't do that. But they also don't want to take it as slow as a control or a combo deck. These decks are actually usually very, very powerful in Hearthstone. Then there's Token, which is something that's a little bit more interesting, but I thought it might be important to bring up anyway. Tokens are a term that you'll hear a lot, especially in regards to Druid. But tokens is essentially anything that a card summons that is not a card themselves. Alright, so for example, if I look at let's actually go to Druid really quick, right? So if we go to Druid, we'll see there are cards like Wisp of the Gold God, summon 7/1/1 Wisps. These Wisps are so-called tokens, right? And a token deck would play, a lot of these cards like Wisps of the Old Gods, or would play a card called Sorcerer's Apprentice, which summons 1/1s every time you cast a spell. If I only could find it. Violet Teacher. Oh. Who's Sorcerer's Apprentice? Oh, that's a Mage card, sorry. Violet Teacher. Right, so Violet Teacher summons a bunch of 1/1s whenever you cast a spell. Now, why am I bringing this up? That's because tokens are actually going to be pretty important in the upcoming expansion, I think. I just wanted to mention it. But token decks tend to generate a lot of minions and flood the board a lot. Again, Hunter is going to be doing a ton of that. Anyway. No. Goodbye, Druid. Goodbye. Then we have Freeze Mage, which Freeze Mage is a very interesting archetype that has existed in Hearthstone for a while. I'm not sure if it will continue to exist in a new expansion, but I thought I might bring it up anyway. Freeze Mage is essentially a combo deck, but it plays a lot of cards like First Nova. What does Freeze do? If you freeze a minion, it can't attack for a turn. Right, so Freeze Mage is called that because they just keep your opponent away forever. They cannot do anything anymore. And then you eventually get to a point where you can just kill them with fireballs and pyroblasts, and you just burst them down, right? That's kind of like one of the big things Mage used to do, but Freeze Mage has been nerfed quite a bit and will not necessarily be viable anymore. Reno decks. Reno decks are something that are... I'm not sure if they're going to be viable anymore, but I think it's still important to bring up. So you may notice this deck here doesn't play any tools. Like every single card in this deck is just a singular. That's because it plays Reno Jackson. Reno Jackson is this guy. If your deck has no duplicates, fully heal your hero. That effect is very, very powerful, right? There's also a Kasakos, which if your deck has no duplicates, create a custom spell. Again, a very powerful card. So Reno decks are just one-offs of everything, and then, these very strong Reno cards. Reno Jackson is sadly rotating out, and that's actually something we want to discuss right now. So, Hearthstone is about to go through one of its biggest changes ever, right? Currently, if we look at cards available for play, right, you can see there's quite a bit of them. Right, there's a lot of cards each class can play. Right, there's a ton of them. Now, that's because we are currently in Standard. Actually, out of all cards in Hearthstone, that exist in Hearthstone, there's a lot more even than that. Right, now I'm in Wild, which means I can just play any card that has ever been made. Right now I can play cards like Deathspite, which was actually insane. Right? All of these cards that are not available right now. Why are they not available? That's because Hearthstone, just like many card games, follows a set rotation. And that rotation every year kind of takes some sets of cards out of the tournament legal list. And as such, some cards just go missing and other cards, they stay around. Right now, currently, the sets that we are allowed to play with are Basic and Classic, and these are always going to be available, right? So these are always there. But Blackrock Mountain, Grand Tournament, League of Explorers, Old Gods, Karazhan, and Gadzajan. Now the thing is that actually Blackrock Mountain, Grand Tournament, and League of Explorers, these three are all gonna go. They're all leaving us. They're all gonna go into Wild, where you can play any card you want. But in Standard, which is the main tournament format and the main ladder format, you are not gonna be allowed to play these anymore. We are gonna get a new expansion to kind of make up for that. So we're gonna get like, kind of like, you know, a bigger card pool again. But it's still a huge change, especially keeping in mind that League of Explorers especially was a very influential set, and a lot of cards from League of Explorers are still being played, even today, right? Even after like, what, 2 years or something. So, yeah, right? So with the upcoming expansion, Standard is going to be rotating, and we're going to lose a lot of cards, and that is going to change a ton. Right, this is very, very important. Now, Reno Jackson is actually one of the cards that will be rotating. So, that's kind of a problem, right? Reno Jackson is going to be gone. That somewhat negates Reno decks. Although, I still believe in Reno Priest, because Reno Priest doesn't need as much healing. But, yeah. Anyway, let's continue on. We got Jade decks. Jades are super fucking silly. Summon a Jade Golem. What is a Jade Golem? A Jade Golem is a golem that, or is a minion, a token that you create that becomes more powerful for each golem you have summoned this game. So the first one you summon is a 1/1, the second one is a 2/2, the third one is a 3/3, the fourth one is a 4/4, and it just keeps going. There's a cap on it, but that cap is 30/30, and I've never seen it reached. Jade decks are very, very powerful. Like, two of the most powerful decks in the game right now are Jade Druid and Jade Shaman. Right, that's right here, which I refer to as mid-range, but yeah. Jade Shaman. These are insane. They're super, 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 super strong. And they are somewhat of a problem because they're very powerful against any sort of control decks. So I just, you know, want to point that out, that Jade decks are something that are in the game. They're spooky. They're very, very fucking spooky. And there's not really much that needs to be said about it. It's a very simple concept. It's just very powerful, right? As it is in basically every single board game ever made. Then we have Pirates. Pirates I already showed you. I just want to bring up Pirates again because this deck is losing exactly one card in the rotation, which is Sir Finley, which really doesn't make a difference. This deck is still going to be around. This deck is still going to be very spooky. And then Sue and Discord Log. So, I actually want to build a deck of this, but Sulok is an interesting little thing here, right? So if we go in here, right, like we want cards like Flame Imp and such, like this kind of shit. Now, Sue, oh well, like Warlock, I guess that's better. Warlock has cards that discard a random card. These discard a random card have cards that go along with it, like for example, Silver Golem. If you discard this minion, you summon it instead. That is something that's still going to be in the upcoming expansion. It's going to be very powerful there. So I just wanted to briefly mention this. Right? Yeah. It's pretty fucking spooky. I don't know why I'm building a deck here. That doesn't even make sense. Alright. Anyway. Almost done here. So, yeah. Alright. Now, I want to just quickly do a general discussion. And while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and play a game. Right? Now, why are we playing a game? It's mostly just so I can further explain some things, you know, like so you get to see some stuff in action, and I'm gonna, in the meantime, discuss some further arguments that I've heard. The first one is this game pay to win? Now, just like any other card game, you have to open up boosters to get to play cards. You have, or like to get the cards, right? Some cards are really rare, like Doomsday is an epic, which are difficult to get. There's like this whole crafting system in the game, but there's no trading. So honestly, you just kind of, you know, you just buy packs and you hope that you get them. Now, you can get packs just through playing regularly, right? You earn so-called gold, which allows you to purchase packs in the store, and then you can use that to, you know, kind of keep yourself going. Now, I'll be honest with you, just through, if you never want to spend any money on this game, you are not going to be competitive, right? So in that sense, I think it's pay to win. I think it is pay to win if you put somebody that hasn't spent any money on the game against somebody that has. In that, okay, well, yes, absolutely. The thing is that that's how every single card game ever is. Right? Like, you can't play fucking Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Without ever spending any money on it. and then expecting to still do as well as people that do. That just doesn't work, ever, in any game, right? So, to some extent, yes. To a much more real extent, I don't think so, right? Because if you do spend some money on the game, then you will have the cards you need, and then it isn't pay to win, right? Like, I have most of the cards in the game. If I play against somebody that also has most of the cards in the game, or even all of them, I don't care. I never feel disadvantaged because of the set of cards I do or do not have. That is not an issue I face. And as such, you know, just not something I agree with overall. I think in the context of a player that has bought stuff against a player that hasn't, yes, but that's what the ranking system is for, right? Players that don't have cards will be at the lower ranks and they'll play against each other, and players that do will be on the higher ranks and playing against each other there. Are things too random in this game, right? Is everything too much RNG? Because there is a lot of RNG in this game, right? Therefore, it'll take control of a random enemy minion. Well, I'll agree that I think in the past, the game has definitely been at stages far too random and there has been too little skill involved. I disagree with that at this stage, especially with the new expansion coming out. I don't think the game is too random. I feel like it is it is an adequate amount of randomness for a card game. Card games are always going to be a little bit more random than other games, and that's just how it is. And there's just not much we can do about it. No real point to complaining. Like, this is something you kind of need to, I guess, somewhat get in your head. If you want to play a card game, expect it to be a card game. This is how it goes, man. Right? Like, and this is a card game. Anyway. How does the ranking system work? The ranking system, well, essentially it works like this. You just play, so there's these ranks in the game. I'm currently rank 12, but this season just started. There's a new season every month, which I think is terrible. Like, if I had to change something about Hearthstone, if I could change something about Hearthstone, that would be what I change. We're getting fucked here, by the way, but that's just because Shaman is really broken. Yeah. Alright, cool. Go ahead and shoot that really quick. I'm not sure if I should do that, but that's what I'm going to. I misplayed here. That sucks. I could have done a lot better. I'm very annoyed with myself right now. Never mind. But yeah, the ranking system is pretty straightforward. It's just, you know, like you play, you gain stars every time you win. You lose stars every time you lose. And eventually, once you have gone through the ranks, there's 25 to rank 1. If you get past rank 1, you go into so-called Legend, which in Legend, well, that is very unfortunate, actually. In Legend, well, that really sucks. Okay. Whatever. We're probably just dead. In Legend, you have a proper elo system, which is nice. I would have liked to get... I'm gonna get to Legend this season. The only reason why I've never gotten to Legend is just because the season is only 1 month long. Which again, I think is the worst part of the game. The season should be longer than 1 month, but... well, whatever. If I got to change... if I was the one in charge of Hearthstone for one decision, I would make it so seasons are 2 months long. I think 2 months is the perfect amount. Doesn't need to be free. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. But I think 1 month is too little. Should you start playing the game? I don't know, man. That's up to you. I really enjoy it. If you like card games, Hearthstone is a good one. It is a little bit expensive to get into if you really want to be competitive, but you don't have to be competitive to enjoy it. Right? You can just play with like random free-to-play cards and it's gonna be alright. It's still fun. I enjoy Hearthstone thoroughly. That's why I'm making content on the game, right? Like, it's something that I have a great time playing, and kind of want to share that. Okay. How dead are we? I think we're pretty fucking dead here. That's alright. But yeah. So, I guess that about sums it up. So let's just go ahead and lose this game really quick, because Shamans are really fucking good. This right there is, by the way, another one of those Reno cards I mentioned. Alright, I'm Reno Jackson here. But yeah, I hope that answered some questions about Hearthstone. You people asked for a video like this, and here I am delivering, so be happy. I hope this was helpful, right? But yeah, gonna keep making Hearthstone videos, short ones like I have been. Okay, well that's actually somewhat decent. So, what we can do is we can heal for free because I played him, right? We play this, which allows us to poke a guy, which is somewhat decent. I think we just got a Reno here. But on the upside, we do have Shadow Form established, but Shadow Form is really nice. It just allows you to like poke people. Just kill a thing every turn. Every turn we kill a thing. He's not playing a lot, which is a little bit odd. Okay, what do you have, my man? But anyway, so yeah, that about sums up Hearthstone. I think this game is really fun, man. I've been playing this game since early beta, and actually, like, something I regret a lot is not, you know, starting content creation for this game earlier than I did. Yeah, let's just concede. I guess it's just super over. It's just gonna be done. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating on the video. And tomorrow we'll just go back to the regular games. And then I'm very excited for the expansion. One question, alright, like one point I forgot to mention is, if you want to start Hearthstone, and right now is the best time to do it, because so many cards are going to be rotating out, right? So the amount of cards you need to actually be competitive is going to be minimal compared to what it used to be. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.